Welcome to Life on Purpose with pastor, author, and international speaker, Sally Smale. Life on Purpose is the media outreach of Establishing Word Ministries. Now, as you prepare to hear the Word of God, thank you for joining Life on Purpose.
Welcome to Life on Purpose, where we believe that every moment should be spent in passionate pursuit of God and His purpose for your life. I'm Dr. Sally Smale, and I am so glad to be your host for this edition. I am welcoming back my special guest, MKenzie Manuel. MKenzie was on the last episode of Life on Purpose, so if you haven't seen that one, you need to go back and watch it to get a foundation for what we're going to be talking about today. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that a lot of parents can struggle with, especially those parents that have children that they're trying to raise, but who have lost other children through miscarriage, stillbirth, or even just death through disease, illness, whatever. And we want to talk today a little bit about the balancing act that you must have to go through in order to enjoy and really be enjoying and being joyful with your living children, while still honoring the lives of those that were lost, and doing so in a way that you don't seem obsessed or overly focused on the lost ones, that other people pick up on it to the point where, especially the living children, feel neglected because of it. So, as a quick recap, you lost one child through miscarriage, another one that died a couple of hours after birth, and then another one that was stillbirth. But now you have four wonderful, beautiful children that are just delightful. So why don't you help our viewers and listeners just kind of maybe lean into that juggling act a little bit?
Yeah. So initially, I'm glad that I had one surviving baby at first.
But you had a miscarriage before her.
Yes.
Right.
I had lost two, and then I had my oldest daughter.
Right.
And it was good to get my feet wet, so to speak, and learn how to be a mother.
Right. Because babies, in case you have been wondering, they don't come with an instruction manual.
No.
Other than that, that's the only instruction.
This is a really good one.
That's the only instruction manual. So usually, God bless our firstborns, they're the guinea pigs. They're the ones that we try everything out on.
Yes, and I felt like I was already a mother because I already had two children, but I didn't have them with me, and I didn't get to mother them and diaper them and feed them like I did with her. And so it was a sweet time to just have the one living child.
Right.
And early on, we had always promised each other, my husband and I, that we would remember our son.
Now, how did you do that, though? Because you named him, you saw him, he was around for how many hours?
8 hours.
8 hours,
Yeah.
8 hours. And he was very real to both you and your husband. So how did you keep from the overwhelming grief that would detract from your living child?
Well, sometimes I didn't. There was a lot of post-traumatic stress that happened with losing a child unexpectedly and in such a tragic way and traumatic way.
That's very good. I think we don't realize that PTSD can be a very real thing for those types of situations. You know, we don't think of that like we think of the trauma of war or, you know, rape or things like that. But yet that is very much a real trauma.
Yes, yes. And especially when you're not prepared for the trauma, when it's completely unexpected, like miscarriages and stillbirths often are. Sometimes you may have a couple hours notice, maybe a couple of days, but generally it's something very sudden and very unexpected. And unfortunately, the statistics show us that 25% of women will experience a miscarriage.
Wow.
And so 1 in 4. When there's 4 women in the room, at least one has personally experienced a miscarriage.
Wow.
And it's slightly different with stillbirth. It's like 1 in 8, I believe, and then it's a little bit better numbers for sudden infant loss, whether it's unexplained or when you do know what caused the death. Infant loss is less common than the stillbirths and the miscarriages. But there's still these astronomical numbers that there's all these women all around us, all these mothers all around us that don't have their babies in their arms.
Yes. And that's such a traumatic loss for them. And being very real. You know, I'm reminded of Psalm 23 that says that we walk through the shadow of death. It's like we can walk through that shadow of a death in so many different ways in our lives. But it goes on to say, God, you're with me. You're with me. And so God taught you how to balance that with your living children.
And so I promised myself that I would never, ever deny my children, whether they were in heaven waiting for me to come home or if they were earthside here, that they're mine. That relationship doesn't change. It's like if your parent or your sibling or some other family member passes away before you, they're still your parent or your sibling or whatever relationship they were to you. That doesn't change. Their location changes.
Oh, that's good.
But their relationship to you does not.
Say that again. That's really good.
Their location changes, but their relationship to you does not change.
Oh, that's so good.
And it's continuous. And for a parent, you know, there's a word when a child loses a parent, they're orphaned. Or if a person loses their spouse, they're a widow or a widower. There's no word for a parent who has lost their child.
Oh, that's so sad.
I think it's because it's indescribable. We
just are not built to survive our children.
No, we're not. Exactly. It goes against the natural order of things to have to bury a child. And that in itself is so traumatic. And it's just not talked about. And the PTSD for that goes well beyond postpartum anxiety or depression, which are very real. And I had those myself with a couple of my babies, just because of the stress.
Oh yeah, and I think our viewers and listeners probably understand that because that's been in the news. It's been, you know, we're very much aware of, you know, the postpartum depression and everything, but I think we're less aware of what happens even on top of that with the trauma of loss.
Exactly. It's everything. You already have hormones going crazy because you've just delivered a baby.
Yeah, whether you're holding that baby or
Right.
not, your body's still
Yes.
going through that.
And-
so you can have postpartum depression whether the child is living or not.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
it's hormones.
That's right.
It's all about the hormones.
Yep.
Thanks, Eve.
Yeah.
And, you know, but then on top of that, on top of those hormones, you have the loss that you have to live with. You have to find a way to live with that loss. And for some people, it's shutting down, which is just not healthy. It's not healthy at all to do that. You have to express yourself. And there's healthy ways to do that.
And how can people that are around the people that have lost, how can we help them to do that? Because I find people, you know, conversely try to talk about everything else but that.
Right.
And they almost, then the person that's experienced it feels like they're being shut up and
Yes.
shut down because
Very.
you're making everybody else uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I'm sure you just want to scream.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
And sometimes you need to scream.
Yes.
You need to have that confidant, that trusted friend
Yes.
that can be there that you can scream with, or screaming into your pillow, screaming with your spouse, whatever it takes.
Right.
And
But how can the people around help you during that time?
get comfortable with being uncomfortable,
All right.
because it's forever.
Right.
My
They expect you to get over it after a
Yes.
while.
Yeah,
Oh, aren't you over that yet?
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago.
yeah, yes. Oh, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that, because, well, oh, it was just a miscarriage. Just a miscarriage? My baby died.
Yes. No matter what stage of development that baby was in.
Absolutely.
Right. Because
Absolutely.
we as Christians believe that life begins at
At
conception.
conception. Right
So,
at the beginning.
and especially when you're wanting that
Yes.
child, and, you know, that isn't just a fetus. That
Right.
isn't
That's
just
your
a
baby.
bunch of tissue.
That's your baby.
That is your baby.
And
Absolutely.
especially the further along you get, and when you know a gender and you've picked a name and all of that, it compounds. It's kind of the
Yes.
further, the longer that you've had that baby in your womb, it's almost the harder it is, because there's more memories. You know, just as spouses who have spent their lives together, they just had 50 years of marriage together, and a spouse dies and the other one follows within days or weeks.
Right. Right.
Because they don't know how to live without them.
Exactly.
And after I had my stillborn son, I distinctly remember pouring my heart out to God and saying, how could you possibly understand? And how am I supposed to get through this if you can't understand? And he said, how do I not understand? I gave my son
To die.
to die for you, for me, for everyone.
That'll get you.
Oh, it still
That'll
gets me.
get you. Yeah.
It still gets me. And it's so true. There is nothing in this life, nothing in this world
That's right.
that God has not already been through.
That's right.
That
Absolutely.
He can't hold us and get us through it.
Absolutely.
And He doesn't cause these things to happen. He will allow them to happen, and He holds us and gets
Exactly.
us through it.
And He cries with us.
He does.
He
And
cries with us
He keeps our tears.
in a bottle.
Yes.
That's right. Every one of them are worth something.
Yes.
So precious that He keeps them in a beautiful bottle.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. So basically, you know, grief is such a weird thing for most people to deal
It
with
is.
anyway, to be
It
around. You know, people don't go to funerals because they're just weirded
hard.
out
Yeah.
of how to, you know, interact with the family and those that have lost loved ones. But even more so with a baby.
Yes.
because that just should
It's
never
heartbreaking.
happen.
Right.
You know, I remember one of the funerals that I conducted was for a couple that had just had their, I think it was their fourth child. The first three were lost at some point in the pregnancy. This one lived for 6 weeks. And then she died. I can honestly say that was probably the hardest funeral that I ever conducted. Just to see, and I'm being very transparent here because for a season of my life, because of my association with one of the funeral homes in town, I did a ton of funerals. And it was mostly for people that didn't have a minister. I was just on their list, and for some reason, I always seemed to get the really hard cases, like a 16-year-old gangbanger or, you know, things like that. But this one, to see that little tiny white coffin, I can't even describe to you. And I didn't even know these people. I could not even describe to you what went on inside of me. And at the grave site, we, you know, released balloons and what they do, you know. And it made me think, because I had been doing so many funerals, that people almost act differently when it's a baby or a child than they do, because they really don't know what to say to the parents. Like, you know, an older person dies, you can talk about memories, you know, good memories, or they did this and weren't they wonderful for this and blah, blah, blah.
What do you do for a baby?
What do you do for a baby? What do you do?
You know, for me, one of the greatest things that has helped me is to just be able to talk about my babies. My children have grown up knowing about their brothers, their big brothers in heaven, and the one little brother for my oldest. And we say their names. We acknowledge their birthdays and what we call their angelversaries, the anniversary of their death.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
so you've included them.
As much as we can.
Right.
You know,
and as much as they can understand.
Sure.
Because they're still children.
And it's always at their level. And if they have a question, we answer it at their level, at what they can understand. And they miss them. They've never met them, but they miss them because they know that there's that connection there.
Yeah.
And
they know they'll get to see them someday.
And we have that. There's a saying that we have a piece of heaven in our home because heaven has a piece of us there.
Yeah.
And that's so true, because our my boys are up there, their siblings, their brothers are up there, and they all know, even the little one. He knows that he has brothers in heaven, and he talks about them when he wants to.
And he's how old?
He's 4.
4
years old.
So you include them right away.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure they have questions. Do you answer their questions? And that's wonderful.
And it's a big help to, especially when it first happens, you don't have to have the words. You just have to have the love and the compassion.
Ah, there it is. There
Just
it is.
be there.
I think, especially as Christians, the biggest way that we can be an image bearer of Christ is showing love and compassion.
Yes.
You know, all throughout the Gospels, it talked about Jesus being moved by compassion.
Yes.
And so I think one of my biggest takeaways from this show, and I thank you so much, because like most people, you know, we're uncomfortable with that topic. I just thank you for sharing your heart and your experience and letting us know that the greatest gift that we can give to somebody that we're close to that has lost a baby or a small child is to just let them talk.
Yeah.
Let them tell you whatever it is they want to tell you about the child. Show compassion.
Yeah.
Stop making them feel like they have to get over it and they can't talk about it, because I'm sure, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something you never get over.
No. I mean, even just last year, some good friends of ours, their oldest son graduated from high school, and our church was honoring the graduates. And they called his name, and he walked across the stage, and I lost it. I lost my composure, and I had to step out because he's the same age that my first son would be if he were still alive. He would have been graduating.
Yes.
And I had to step out, and unfortunately I missed the entire sermon that week because I was just such an emotional wreck. I could not go back into the sanctuary.
Yeah.
But
all of those landmarks, you will remember.
Always.
Now, when your children's or your friends' children start getting married, you'll go through that, and then when they become grandparents, and it's like we forget and don't understand all of those landmarks of life that we celebrate, with our children and our children's children. MKenzie, you just have so touched a soft, place, and I'm just so grateful for you. And I believe because you've been through this, you have gifts to give to those that have or are going through that. So I wonder, as we close out this episode, if you would just, if there's anything you'd like to share that's on your heart, or if you would like to pray, however you would like, take just a couple of minutes and speak into the lives of those that are watching and listening.
Well, I would like to let all of you know, not just the mothers, but the fathers, because the fathers lose too. The families lose. You're not alone. You're not alone physically, because there's so many others that have walked this path, that are walking this path. And there's help out there through several different ministries. There's online support groups. I'm actually part of several of them because others helped me.
And they can contact you.
Oh, definitely.
We've had your information at the bottom of the screen. You can contact MKenzie.
Definitely.
For help. She'd be more than willing to come and speak to a group or a church or a woman's organization, whatever, to share with you about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for what you have given and added to this show and to our lives. And I really appreciate it, because knowing you helps me to be a better friend and to be able to support you and others that I might come in contact that are living through the same thing. So thank you. Now, if you would like to hear more from MKenzie, please be sure and watch the last episode, the previous episode, where she goes into more detail about her experiences while they were happening. And then stay tuned for the next episode. She has so graciously agreed to be with me again, and we're going to continue on the subject of parenting and different ways that families might look. So if you're at all interested in being a part of this ministry, we are so thankful for the Holy Spirit Broadcast Network and for the Christian Women's Word Network and all of the other platforms that Life on Purpose is seen on. Be sure and contact them, support them, let them know that you love this kind of programming. If you would be interested in contacting me, getting to know about Establishing Word Ministries, which is the 501c3 nonprofit that the Lord has allowed me to have to use to bring the gospel all around the globe, you can hop over to establishingword.com. That is my website. You can read all about my ministry, about my first book that I wrote. I'm in the process of finishing the next one. And while you're there, contact me. Go to the Connect page and contact me. Send me an email. Let me know that you enjoyed this program, that you got something out of it. Let me know a topic or something that you would like us to discuss. And while you're at the website, why don't you hop over to the donate page? Pray and think about becoming a donor for the ministry. You can give a one-time gift of any amount, or we can arrange a monthly sponsorship so that you can partner with me as we help people walk along the journey, living every day of their life on purpose.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.